work, but...
Hello, Celine. Good morning.
I'm glad you're here.
Hey, Graham.
A lot of work to do.
Got your message. It said urgent. What's going on?
Well, you remember Congress gave us a failing grade on our strategic plan.
Yeah, we weren't the only agency either, so what's new?
We just got word they want us to revise it top to bottom.
And it's not just Congress. Even the Deputy Secretary wants it redone.
Are you kidding me? I thought we had the strategic planning thing behind us. Another few years at least.
Not by a long shot. And we really better jump on this if we want to have it submitted in time.
What do you want from us, Lenore?
Well, we're asking several of the teams to review what we did wrong and then make recommendations on the revisions.
And we'll do our best.
I don't know about you, but this just seems like another paperwork exercise aimed at making us look bad. Where does it end?
If we're talking about accountability for performance in government, it's not likely to end. In fact, there's more emphasis on accountability than ever before. It's called the Government Performance and Results Act, commonly known as GPRA or simply the Results Act. And yes, it will also lead to increased scrutiny of the effectiveness of specific programs and agencies. But that wasn't the law's major purpose. I know, because I was there at the beginning.
Sunnyvale, California. In the late 1970s, Sunnyvale was a city struggling with how to balance revenue reduction on the one hand with growing service demands on the other. As mayor, John Mercer worked with city council and staff to implement something radically new, a system of long-term strategic planning and performance-based budgeting that would link dollars to specific results. The system was successful beyond their highest expectations. Costs went down, performance shot up, and citizen satisfaction ratings went through the roof. And Sunnyvale became a new model of efficiency in government. It then became John Mercer's job to lead the drafting of the law that would bring strategic planning and performance measurement to every federal program and agency nationwide, the Government Performance and Results Act.
Now, the intent in bringing this new approach to government is not, as some fear, to find ways to eliminate necessary programs or to harass managers. Quite the opposite. The intent is to give all of us the tools we'll need to improve the performance of government programs and at the same time significantly reduce costs. And while the terminology and the specifics might vary, these principles apply equally well to any governmental organization of any size or complexity, be it federal, state, or like Sunnyvale, even at the local level.
This approach consists primarily of two distinct but interrelated processes: the strategic plan and the annual performance plan. The strategic plan consists of a mission statement that clearly states the organization's purposes and statutory mandate, and from which are derived a set of general goals, each of which is broken down into several objectives. Next is the annual performance plan, which includes one or more measurable performance goals linked to each of the above strategic objectives. And, as a final step, each of the performance goals is linked to an appropriate program activity and account in the annual budget.
We're going to get down to cases.
Where do most organizations fall down in their attempts to understand and implement strategic planning and performance measurement?
Last plan, so we know what.
By looking at some of the common mistakes, the pitfalls, we'll get a good picture of how these principles are supposed to work and what goes wrong when they don't.
Let's start at the beginning with our existing mission statement.
The first and most fundamental part of strategic planning is developing a mission statement. But the pitfall here is writing a mission statement with elements so broad and general that it could apply to other agencies.
Well, I guess some of what we wrote wasn't really all that specific to us. But...
To put it mildly, it may be inspirational, but frankly, if I hadn't helped write it, I wouldn't know it was ours.
The mission statement should be a concise, results-oriented statement of why the governmental entity exists and what it does. It should be specific enough that you can determine which entity it is, and general enough that it covers the range of major functions and core programs.
At least this begins to capture what we're about. Well, now that we made a first pass at the recommended changes to the mission statement, let's turn to some of our strategic plan goals.
Well, let's see. Well, one of our goals is to promote valued, strong, and responsive programs through effective policy development and research.
Yeah, well, I think it would be pretty difficult to assess whether we've achieved that or not.
The next step is to develop general goals and objectives out of your mission statement. But be careful. The pitfall here, goals and objectives that are more process-oriented than outcome-oriented.
Well, let's look at some other ones here.
You know, none of them really relate directly to the reason we exist.
Yeah, but they're worthy goals and they're critical to our overall success.
Yeah, sure, but I don't think our citizens are gonna spend their tax dollars on programs which create model workplaces and effective organizations.
Well, how about leaving them in the plan but as lower level goals?
Okay, I'll buy that.
Let's check some of the rest of our goals, most of which are pretty solid.
Well, it helps that we solicited input from our congressional committees before we wrote them.
But your goals shouldn't be developed in isolation. Pitfall number 3, neglecting to solicit input from Congress and those affected by your programs.
Yeah, but the GPRA also requires us to get input from our major constituencies, and on that we didn't score so well.
The goals and objectives in the strategic plan should be long-term, general, and clearly derived from the mission statement. Your goals should also include a discussion of what you will consider to be success down the road. And while your strategic plan goals don't need to be measurable, they do need to be results-oriented.
You know, this result-oriented thing, it still baffles me. It means that the strategic plan goals need to be stated in measurable terms, right?
Not necessarily. It's really the annual performance goals that should be objective, quantifiable, and measurable.
Oh, well, then I'm confused. Is there a difference between result-oriented and measurable?
Well, look at it this way. Landing men on the moon is an example of a legitimate goal that's results-oriented, but not measurable in a numerical way.
Okay. What about our goal to develop this employee training program?
In that case, maybe the question should be, why do we have an employee training program in the first place?
Well, that's easy, to improve the ability of our employees to do something or other.
So ideally, the objective should require some measure of how well we've improved the abilities of our employees in that specific capability.
You mean like to have a certain percentage of them certified as skilled in some new technology so we can process applications faster?
Or to have fewer customer complaints from the public.
Yeah, and you can measure that. And it's also results-oriented as well.
Got it.
One way to understand the distinction between measurable and results-oriented is to think in terms of outputs and outcomes. For instance, this goal may appear to be both measurable and results-oriented. However, if the result is only the level of an activity, then all we're really measuring is an output. But activities are presumably conducted in order to achieve some larger objective, the real result we are after. That is an outcome. Both outcomes and outputs are important. However, since outcomes relate directly to the achievement of your strategic plan, they should have a higher priority.
But often, it isn't all that obvious what the particular outcome of a government program should be, nor easy to determine the actual result. This is why it is sometimes necessary to use more in-depth studies called program evaluations. A pitfall here is neglecting in the strategic plan to explain how such program evaluations will be used to get a handle on these more challenging areas of performance measurement.
Next, we need to review the critique that our strategic plan didn't include a description of how the goals and objectives are to be achieved.
This was supposed to be the strategy part, but it was one of the weakest parts of our plan.
Once your strategic goals are in place, you need to develop strategies for achieving them. But herein lies pitfall number 5, identifying strategies that are just descriptions of current activities.
Wait a minute, now I worked on that part, and we gave a good description of the major activities of each of our organizational units.
That's right, but it's not what was needed. We need to explain the thinking behind our strategies rather than just describing our activities.
Celine's right. We need to describe what processes, staff skills, and resources we'll need to use in order to achieve the results we've been promising.
I guess so. So that we can make an assessment of whether our planned approach is likely to be successful. Well, here's something we didn't address adequately. The linkage between our strategic plan and our annual performance plan.
I think that part of our problem was having two different groups working on these plans. One on the strategic plan and one on the annual performance plan.
But it's not enough just to have goals and strategies. They need to be linked. Pitfall number 6, weak linkages between your strategic goals and your annual performance plan goals.
I think we're missing something. Let's go back to our mission statement. For brevity's sake, just say it's our mission to, say, have safe highways. What's a general goal that could be linked to this? And one of our general goals could be to reduce auto accident rates. And one of the objectives that we could link to that particular general goal would be to reduce teenager-caused accidents by, say...
20% in the next 5 years.
You're right. Now, let's take this beyond our strategic plan and down into our annual performance plan. One of our annual goals might be to aim for a 4% decrease in the rate of teenager-caused accidents during the coming year.
But how do we know that we're doing things that will bring about that goal?
Exactly.
Now, I know this step isn't required by the GPRA, but one activity that might bring about that goal would be to develop a way to identify the highest risk teenage drivers.
Another would be to develop a radio TV campaign around teen safety awareness.
Okay, let me write that.
I get it. And that's how we'll be able to link our activities all the way up to our long-term goals.
That's right. Right. Now we need to find ways to link our annual performance plan to the budget.
Whoa. Time out. I thought we already did that when we referenced our program and financing schedules in the budget.
When discussing linkage, don't overlook the financial end of your plan. Pitfall number 7, inadequate linkage to the budget.
You're right, but that's just the minimum. What we need is a clear-cut way to show that the money we spend each year helps achieve our long-term goals, and that dollars and goals are connected in a way that begins to move us toward real performance-based budgeting.
But how do you really show the cost of achieving a goal?
Wait a minute. We've already made a pretty good start by listing each of the activities that we'll engage in during the year under each annual goal.
I get it. By costing out all the activities we've identified as necessary to achieve our goals, we're automatically providing the links to the budget.
Activity-based costing involves figuring out the full costs of each activity that you expect to engage in. Not just salaries, but also pensions and benefits, travel, office supplies, and all other relevant costs. This is perhaps the clearest way to link dollars to program goals. It's another step towards implementing GPRA's ideal of performance-based budgeting, and it's also an effective method for complying with the added requirement that government agencies implement managerial cost accounting.
Now, once we've costed each of the prescribed activities, we'll be much better able to connect resources to results.
But if you follow this to its logical conclusion, we'd have to revise our entire budget structure.
You're right. We're going to need to broach this issue on Capitol Hill with our appropriations subcommittee.
Whoa, Graham. Convincing Congress that we need to change our budget format? Easier said than done.
But, I don't know, what if we could show them that by changing our budget structure, we could give them a clearer picture of the relationship between dollars and performance?
Then I think they might be receptive.
planning, developing objectives, and linking actions to dollars. These will go a long way towards helping you build a performance-based organization and help you to comply with GPRA. But there are several other issues as well.
You know, I hate to say it, but if some of these programs don't get increased funding, some of these goals aren't going to happen.
For instance, explore anything which might impact your ability to carry out the plan. Pitfall number 8. Inadequate discussion of external factors.
Assuming a flat budget for the near future, and I think we should, we really shouldn't be recommending any goals that are predicated on increased funding.
You know, if we think about it, there are a lot of outside circumstances that could affect our ability to deliver. The actions of state governments, the national economy, even natural disasters.
Well, then we ought to identify them and describe their potential impact here in the strategic plan. You know, here's something we overlooked, and we cannot fix it. Both GAO and OMB have identified major management problems within our programs.
Developing a strategic plan is difficult enough. How can we reform our management and practices at the same time?
It is also critical to look at the impact of management on your plan. Pitfall number 9. Major management problems not addressed.
Okay, I think the point is, if there are specific management issues standing in the way of us achieving our mission, then we need to address them here, in our plan.
Now, here's something about cross-cutting functions. What the heck are they talking about?
Another pitfall here. No coordination of cross-cutting functions. That is, ones also addressed by other institutions.
We need to show we're at least looking at ways to coordinate our strategies with other institutions with related responsibilities.
I can think of more than one organization that engages in things like environmental regulation, job training, economic development, even various housing programs. With these and other recommendations we've made, the next strategic plan should fare a lot better.
Maybe not.
What do you mean?
Well, it's one thing to have grand plans and lots of useful performance measures, but it's quite another thing to actually have information systems in place that can track the data and give you access to them when you need it. Now, we haven't addressed that problem here at all.
And finally, it's important to show how you will get the information you need to monitor performance. Pitfall 11, little discussion of data capacity issues.
I thought the only GPRA reporting requirement was to give an annual performance report after the close of the year. I mean, isn't that enough?
No, listen, if we're going to really manage to the plan, we're not going to want to wait till year end to make course corrections. I mean, we're going to want to track performance against program goals monthly, even weekly.
Our data systems may be great for a lot of purposes, but if they aren't able to report accurate performance data, we'll need to talk about how we're going to fix that problem. This would have cost us points.
Thanks for catching it, Carter.
Okay.
Lenore, how are our revisions received?
Much better. The Deputy Secretary was proud of the job we all did, especially since the reception on Capitol Hill was much more positive. Oh, he particularly liked those strategies for improving our data management systems.
Well, you can thank Carter for spotlighting that.
Good call, Carter.
Thanks. And I'm beginning to see how it'll help us manage better day to day.
Strategic planning and performance measurement may be mandated by the Government Performance and Results Act, but they are also simply the right way to manage resources and reduce costs in any governmental organization, whether federal, state, or at the local level. They serve the dual purpose of improving program performance while strengthening accountability to the citizens for the use of their tax dollars.
Begin with a mission statement that is concise, results-oriented, but not so general that it could apply to other institutions. Make sure your general goals and objectives are outcome-oriented, reflect input from Congress and other stakeholders, account for long-term program evaluations, but are not merely descriptions of existing activities. Create strong links between strategic goals, annual performance plan goals, and the budget. Adequately address external factors, management problems, and coordination of efforts with other government agencies. And finally, make sure your information systems are truly able to give you access to the performance data that is relevant to achieving your goals.